Welcome to a Pulp Event podcast, brought to you by the Pulp Net, your link to the online world of the pulp magazines for over 25 years. Learn more about the pulp magazines through articles, blogs, bibliographies, links, over 100 episodes of this podcast, and much more at thepulp.net. In this Pulp Event podcast, old-time radio expert Karl Schadow looks at radio adaptations of stories that appeared in Weird Tales. 2023 marked the 100th anniversary of the fantasy and horror fiction magazine, Weird Tales. This podcast was recorded on August 3rd at PulpFest 2023 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Great. Well, I want to thank everybody for staying at 10:30 for the last segment here. Being the last of the shows, I can either run this for an hour and a half, but I'm going to make this real short for everybody so we can get to bed. This is just basically going to be a survey of various stories from Weird Tales that ended up on the radio. And so I've got one of the covers there of Weird Tales, and I do this arrow to get to the radio. So we'll see how some of these went. I want to put things in a little bit of a perspective here. Weird Tales was one of the several, maybe one of 100 pulp magazines that made it to were adapted to radio. And I've separated these in a couple different categories. On the left, the anthology, Scotland Yard, which I published on this year in Blood and Thunder, that Dell publication. They had a radio series for Scotland Yard in 1930 and 31. Of course, Love Story magazine, one of the Street and Smith publications, 1931, 1932, and Adventure had a series in 1931 called Moments of Adventure, and these were basically anthologies where they just pulled various stories out of the pulp magazine and made it into a various series. And this compares to the single characters, like the Street and Smith, the Adventure. This is the 1941 series, Benson, that was on WHN. Pete Rice, the Western Juvenile series, which was also on WOR, which was on WOR in the mid-30s. And then something that Kristen mentioned, but though I did see a quick slide there that had the Tasty Lax. The Spider was on radio very briefly, and there's a couple of other auditions of the Spider character. And I also wanted to mention Cornell Woolrich, one of the most prolific pulp writers that we know of. He did several stories in Detective Tales, Black Mask, Detective Fiction Weekly, all kinds of mysteries, pulps, and he's probably one of the biggest authors whose stories ended up on radio in various anthologies. And then we come to Weird Tales, and it's very interesting that we have a couple of dedicated series, what I've called dedicated series versus anthologies. And Will Oliver had published some of this material. Oh wow, I apologize for the slides when I had sent them. I guess they didn't, but that's okay. On the left, the dedicated series, there's three series, 1930, 1933, and 1945, that were basically culled right from Weird Tales pulp stories. Weird Tales also ended up on several anthologies, from World's Greatest Stories to the Kate Smith's Hour, to Mole Mystery, to Suspense, to The Man with Book and Pipe, University of Scranton Radio Workshop, Radio City Playhouse, Murder by Experts, and The Mysterious Traveler. For Weird Tales, the first series actually started in 1930, and this predates Alonzo Dean Cole for The Witch's Tale, which started in New York in May of 1931. As I was going to mention just in the previous slide, Will Oliver had published some of this material in Blood and Thunder a couple of years ago. At that time, he didn't know all of the ins and outs of this 1930 series. It was a local series, WTAM in Cleveland, which was the NBC affiliate at that time. Edward Smith, who was the director of the series on the station, was a pioneer in radio drama during the 1920s on WGY. I have to plug the hometown Schenectady, New York station, WGY, who was a pioneer in radio drama in the early 20s, starting in 1922. In 1929, Smith moved to WTAM, where he continued his work in radio drama. And how he came up with this Weird Tales series, I have no idea. Most of this comes from newspapers, and you'll see that It only ran for five episodes. Wednesday nights at midnight, which actually moved into Thursday morning, in October of 1930. And you can see that they pulled various stories: the House of the Skull, the Druid Shadow, We Don't Know, October 15th. And then there's the Edmund Hamilton for October 22nd, and then the Ralph Milne Farley series, which they culled from 2 issues for that Friday, the last series, October 31st, on Another Dracula. Then in 1933, a syndicated series was proposed by Hollywood Radio Attractions, who worked with a distributor, McGregor and Solly. Edgar Fogel was the director, with Oliver Drake, the scriptwriter, and Will Oliver, in his Blood and Thunder story, had included some information. Ed Holtz had interviewed Oliver Drake back in the 70s and gotten some information about this series. And I'm not going to go into all this right now, but they included the cast: William Farnham, who was one of the silent film stars; Jason Robards Sr., father of Jason Robards; Richard Carl, Florence Britton, Lucille Amaya, and others. It got cut off at the bottom, but maybe you can see that. Unfortunately, this series, only three episodes were recorded. And we have an episode of number 2, the second episode, The Curse of Nagana, which was based on the Hugh B. Cave story, The Ghoul Gallery. And that was from June of 1932. Again, I apologize, the slides just didn't work out on this. And at the bottom, which has been cut off, there's The Curse of Nagana. That audio is actually available online. Randy Riddle's, if you Google Randy Riddle Esoteric Old Time Radio, you'll be able to come up with his website, and he has that on there. That's on a Columbia disc, and that's from 1933, and we're fortunate to have at least that half episode available for study. Unfortunately, the series, they ran out of money. Fogel and Hollywood Radio Attractions ran out of money, and unfortunately, that series did not progress past those 3 episodes. Now we come to the series that many of you may have known about, Stay Tuned for Terror. I've been working on this for many, many years, and I published much of the history of this program in Blood and Thunder a couple of years ago, and also online in the Old Radio Times. For several years, Robert Bloch, and that's a picture of Robert Bloch on the right, he and his friends from the Milwaukee Fictioners used to dress up, he and Harold Gower, and so for publicity for this, he dressed up as a ghoul. And it's a pretty funny picture of Robert Bloch. He was a script writer. He got together with James Doolittle, his friend from Milwaukee, and they worked with Burl Adams and Johnny Neblett to produce this series in Chicago. It was 39 episodes, 15 minutes each. This was during the first few months of 1945. Bloch would commute down to Chicago, the studios at WBBM in Chicago, and they would record this as a syndicated series. Howard Keegan was the director. He directed Lights Out, some of the Lights Out episodes from the 1930s. In the cast included James Doolittle, the stage name Craig Dennis, James' brother Don, and the actresses Angeline Orr and Amira Rustler. 39 episodes were produced during 1945. Of these, 24 were from Bloch's Weird Tales stories, either published previously or after the series was recorded. 7 others from Fantastic Adventures, Strange Stories, and some others. But what is most interesting about this series is that there are 8 original radio dramas that have not been reproduced anyplace. They have not appeared in any other media, either printed or in films or anything, and we're hot after these original dramas. Unfortunately, Bloch did not keep any of the recordings or any of the scripts. The series was broadcast in the U.S., Canada, and TH is the territory of Hawaii. And down there at the bottom of the screen, the local sponsors included in Chicago and WMAQ was a chemical company, and in Hawaii was a service station. There was various sponsors all over the country. This is just a partial list of the 24 Weird Tales series that Bloch wrote, in various Egyptology, mythology, vampires, all kinds of interesting stories. As you can see, some of these were published in the 30s before the series was recorded, and then others were Block held on to these and published these in Weird Tales anywhere from 1946 to 1949 or later. There's 2 episodes available. I've indicated they're on archive.org, and if you just include Block's name and stay tuned, you'll be able to pick those up. And I think if Will and I have worked this together, we're going to find, there we go. So we're going to listen to an episode.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for terror. Stay tuned for shivers and excitement. Listen to Craig Dennis in The Boogeyman Will Get You, written by Robert Bloch for Weird Tales magazine and adapted by the author especially for this program. You'll hear it now if you
stay tuned for terror.
And now, here is Craig Dennis in The Boogeyman Will Get You.
You're afraid of the dark, aren't you? Oh, but you are. I know all about you. Do you understand? You were afraid of the dark when you were a child. Not because of robbers or thieves or murderers. Children don't think of such things. You were afraid of the dark because of the boogeyman. That's the name your parents used, boogeyman. One of those smart, sophisticated, grown-up words. But there is terror behind it. When you were a child, you knew what the boogeyman looked like. You would see him in your dreams. That black, grinning shape with the wicked red eyes and the clutching claws. You heard his buzzing voice mumbling to you in sleep when you had nightmares. And you'd wake up screaming for your mother. Admit it. You did scream, didn't you? And now that you're grown up, you laugh about it. But deep down inside, you're still afraid. You say you don't believe such things? It's all superstition. Then why are you still afraid of the dark? Why do you keep the lights on when you're home alone at night? I'll tell you why. Because you know it's true. There are such things as monsters. There are such evil beings. And the boogeyman will get you if you don't watch out. Well, what do you think of it?
Marvelous. I don't know how you do it, Walter.
Great stuff. You say it's part of a new essay?
That's right. Looks like I'll have it finished this week.
But, Walter, you work too hard. Cooped up all day long in that cottage of yours. Why don't you relax?
That's just why I rented the cottage, to stay cooped up and get some work done. A book doesn't write itself, you know.
I don't see how you fellas do it. Writing, I mean. Me, I'll stick to the insurance business.
Life insurance must be a wonderful thing.
Mean to tell me you're not insured, man?
Oh, wait a minute now, darling. Walter, you'll have to excuse that husband of mine. He's always trying to sell something. Louis, let the poor man alone. We invite him over here tonight for a visit, remember?
I appreciate it, too. You folks are very kind to ask me in, but I'm apt to bore you with my essays.
Bore me? Oh, nonsense. You nearly scared me stiff.
Is that why Nancy isn't around? Do I scare her, too?
Oh, of course not. The child's probably out with her gang. You know, the Bobby Sox crowd.
Nancy is a very remarkable young woman. She didn't strike me as a typical member of the younger generation at all.
Well, she isn't really. Nancy is very mature for 17. Too mature, I'm afraid. Sometimes she comes out with something that surprises me.
Really?
Yes. Now, take what she was saying about you the other day.
Louis.
Oh, guess I put my foot in it that time.
Nancy said something about me? What was it?
Oh, nothing at all. Matter of fact, I've forgotten just exactly what it was.
Please, tell me. I won't be offended. I'm curious. I've noticed that daughter of yours watching me, and I've wondered about it.
Well, you'll have to excuse her, Walter. She's just a kid after all. She said, well, we were talking about why we never saw you in the daytime, out on the tennis court or at the beach. And she said, that's not so strange. Vampires always sleep in the daytime.
Vampires?
Don't adolescents get the funniest notions sometimes?
Yes, they do.
She's awfully interested in you, really, Walter. After all, you're handsome, stranger here at the resort, an older man. I do believe she's getting a crush on you, but tries to hide it by crazy remarks.
Calling you a vampire. Where does she get such ideas? Reads too many books, I'd say.
Yes.
Sly kid, though. I asked her why she thought you were a vampire. Know what she said?
What did she say?
Said it was because you didn't eat any food.
She said what?
Nancy said she'd asked around town at the grocery store and the butcher shop, and that you never bought any food.
I shut her up in a hurry, though. Young lady, I said, apparently you don't know much about bachelors' eating habits. Did you ever hear of places called restaurants? You should have seen the look on Nancy's face when I... Why, hello, Nancy. We were just talking about you.
So I heard. Well, your manners, dear. Aren't you going to say hello to Mr. King?
Good evening, Nancy.
Nancy, Mr. King spoke to you. Nancy, what are you doing, child?
She's making the sign of the cross, an ancient custom. It's supposed to ward off vampires.
That's a good one. Well, young lady, how come you were running around in the dark tonight? Aren't you afraid of evil spirits?
Don't joke about things you don't understand, Father.
Nancy, that's no way to talk to your father. Where were you?
Oh, just walking with Billy Leggett. Up in the hills under the hemlock trees.
I suppose that's where you lost your scarf, young lady.
Oh, yes, I didn't know I'd lost it.
Well, folks, I've got to be running along. It's getting late.
So soon?
Yes, it's getting a little late.
All right, Walter. See you around. You sure you don't mind walking home alone?
Oh, of course not.
Maybe we could send Nancy along with you to protect you from vampires.
Nancy was a silly little girl. I knew it. But still, she upset me. Maybe it was because she was so beautiful and she hated me so. Thought I was a vampire. Just a silly little girl with a queer idea in her pretty head. I wondered what she was trying to do. At night, when I got back to the cottage, I found out. I stood in front of the door and saw something lying on the path. It was Nancy's scarf. What had she been doing here? She said she had gone for a walk to the hills, near the hemlock trees, but here was her scarf. And as I opened the door, my hand touched something. A wreath on the doorknob. A wreath of hemlock. Hemlock. That's what you put on the door to keep vampires away. I thought about it all night. What was that girl up to? The next day I investigated a little. I found out plenty. Nancy had spread talk all over the village. Talk about me, about my habits, how I stayed in all day and came out at night, about my not eating at home. She'd even tried to call New York to check up on me, whether I really had a job and so on. She told the minister I didn't dare come to church and said I had no mirrors in my house because a vampire couldn't look into mirrors. This wasn't funny anymore. The foolish kid was making trouble for me. Somehow she had this mad obsession about vampires. I had to talk to her. So that night I started over for her place, but before I arrived, I ran into her by accident on the path.
Oh, you startled me.
Sorry, Nancy. I didn't mean to frighten you. But say, I've been looking for you. Let's take a walk, shall we?
Well, really, Mr. King, I have a date.
Only for a few minutes, my dear, and why so formal? Call me Walter. By the way, I seem to have a speck in my eye. Have you a mirror in your purse?
A mirror? Why, yes. Here it is.
Oh, good. Let me see. Ah. There, I've got it. Oh, thank you.
You looked into the mirror.
Of course. And I found that hemlock on my doorknob last night, too. Oh, don't look so startled, Nancy. I know all about your ideas. You thought I was a vampire, didn't you? Just because I work all day and eat in restaurants and walk at night. But you're wrong. You know that now, don't you? I look in mirrors and touch hemlock and all the rest.
Yes, I see. I guess you think I'm an awful fool, Walter.
Not at all. I think you're a very lovely girl. I wish it wasn't so dark out here so I could see your hair. You have beautiful hair, Nancy. Look, the moon is rising. I can see you now. Nancy, you aren't afraid of me anymore.
No. Walter, I never was afraid. Not really. I just thought up all this vampire stuff to make you notice me. And besides, all vampires are tall and dark and handsome, like you.
You're a very clever little girl, Nancy. Very clever. Only I wish you hadn't gone to the police today.
Police? Then you know?
Yes, I found that out, too. A search warrant for my house.
Oh, but that was all a joke. And you aren't really a vampire, so it doesn't matter. When they come, we'll laugh at them.
I'll laugh at them. You won't.
Walter, what are you doing? Let go of me. Walter, what's happening to you? You're changing. Walter.
Too bad you were such a meddling little fool, Nancy. I can't let you get away now. It would spoil everything. You guessed too much.
Oh, Walter, let me go. Walter. Oh, good heavens. Then it is true. You are a vampire.
No, my dear. I'm not a vampire. I'm just a werewolf.
You have just heard Craig Dennis in The Boogeyman Will Get You, written by Robert Bloch, author of stories in Weird Tales magazine. The original music was conceived and played by Rommel Fay. In just a moment, we'll tell you about the next story in
Stay tuned for terror.
In the meantime,
All right, were you all surprised that he turned into a werewolf? I'll get to you later. Probably the most famous of the Weird Tales articles, Weird Tales stories that Bloch wrote that ended up in the Stay Tuned for Terror was yours truly, Jack the Ripper, from July of 1943, Weird Tales. And this is the list of programs that it was adapted for from 1944 to 1950. It was first on the Kate Smith Hour. I'm not sure if Bloch knew about this. It was adapted by Ken Crossan, and it was a 15-minute segment in Kate's show, which was an hour long, and it was a variety show, and occasionally she would have various dramas, and so somehow they picked the Block's Tale, Yours Truly, Jack the Ripper, and that was really the premiere of the series on radio. Some of the history in the past has been written that, when this was on, that Block immediately got asked to do Stay Tuned for Terror. Well, that's really not the case. Block had been interested in Stay Tuned for Terror for quite some time, and I'm really not sure how it ended up on the Kate Smith Hour. The next one is the Mole Mystery Theater. That was on NBC from 43 to 1948. It was a half-hour show. They did many, many different adaptations of pulp magazines. For Yours Truly, Jack the Ripper, Constance Smith adapted that, and Block was not very happy with the ending, which I'm not going to give away for those of you who have not either read the story or listened to the episode. We do have that. It's an Armed Forces radio service version, and it's interesting. They had various personalities to do the introductions, and you can easily find that online. Peter Lorre does the introduction to that. So if you go to, you just Google Mole Mystery Theater, Yours Truly, Jack the Ripper, you should be able to find that on various websites. And then again, I mentioned for Stay Tuned for Terror, that's 15 minutes, that's Block's own adaptation. We're looking for that one. Currently there are 2 episodes available from the Stay Tuned for Terror series. The one we just heard, The Boogeyman Will Get You, and the other one is Lizzie Borden Took an Axe. I'm also working on getting 2 more out in the circulation, which have just been discovered. In 1948, the Mole Mystery Theater did an encore version of Block's story. It was basically the same script by Constance Smith with a different cast. But I find of this list, I find the most interesting is that one from April 10th, 1949. It was the University of Scranton Radio Workshop. And during the spring semester 1949, on Sunday afternoons on WSCR, the radio workshop was given a half an hour at 4:30 to do all kinds of different dramas and comedies. And how they ended up picking Block's story, I have no idea. I've contacted the university, and I'm still working with their archives to find out if they've got a script or any kind of correspondence or any kind of recording. The last one that I can find so far of Yours Truly, Jack the Ripper was on Murder by Experts. This series, again, half an hour on Mutual from 49 to 51, and it was basically the best of the mystery series. It was coordinated by Robert Arthur and David Cogan of The Mysterious Traveler, and they picked stories from Mole Mystery, from Suspense, from their own series, The Mysterious Traveler, and basically had them repeated on Murder by Experts. Of course, they didn't tell the audience that, but many of us who are doing research now will find out this is the case, from Murder by Experts. I'm going to move now to the anthology programs where Weird Tale series was the stories were presented on various series. The first one is the Dunwich Horror by Lovecraft, of course, and it was on Suspense November 1st, 1945. It was originally published in April 1929 issue. William Spear, this is when William Spear was producer, director, and editor of Suspense during the mid to late 1940s. The Roma Wine Company of Fresno, California was the sponsor. Sylvia Richards was the script writer. She adapted the story. And Byrne Surrey did the sound effects. And in the cast, Ronald Coleman was Dr. Armistead. He was assisted by Bill Johnstone, Wally Mayer, Joseph Kearns, who was also the signature voice of Suspense, and Elliot Lewis played a Wilbur, the monster that they were all after. We have audio of this. It's the Armed Forces version, and it's an okay adaptation. The audio quality is pretty good for that. Again, if you go to online and just Google Suspense, Dunwich Horror Audio, you should be able to find that on various websites. Another one on Suspense was The Ghost Hunt, Herbert Russell Wakefield's story from March of 1948. It was adapted by Walter Brown Newman, and it was on Suspense June 23rd, 1949. So it's interesting that it had only been out about a year or so when Suspense producer-director Anton M. Leader, working with Newman, Walter Brown Newman, selected this story and adapted it. Again, Byrne Surrey did the sound effects, and Ralph Edwards from Truth or Consequences. starred as the DJ who goes into the house and tape records what the event's going on. And again, I'm not going to go into the plot or anything like that, but Ralph Edwards has did a fantastic job on this. And we have the audio of this also available. Ralph was assisted by Herb Butterfield, Franklin Parker, and Roland Winters, and others in this. And this is a fairly interesting story and a pretty good adaptation. Then we have Ray Bradbury, The Crowd, from Weird Tales, May 1943, on Suspense, September 21st, 1950. Elliot Lewis at that time had taken over from Leader, and he was the producer-director. He got Morton Fine and David Friedkin to adapt the script. Suspense had guest stars, Hollywood guest stars. So Dana Andrews was selected to star, and he was actually the lieutenant, which is a new character that they introduced into the story. This adaptation is so-so. Again, we have the audio for this online, and it's unfortunately it's not one of the better adaptations on Suspense. Andrews is assisted by Howard McNair, Jack Crucian, Irene Tedrow, Truda Marson, and others. And I have to give a shout out to Dr. Joe Webb, who's a big Suspense researcher. He's got a blog project that he does, suspenseproject.blogspot.com, and he goes into many of these episodes on a daily basis, promoting Suspense. There's another familiar face there that we probably know Bradbury more than the one that I just showed you from 1950s. The Wind. This was on Radio City Playhouse. This was an NBC series, another anthology series that adapted various stories from various sources, and they happened to pick The Wind, which Bradbury had published in Weird Tales from the March 1943 issue. Producer, director, and host was Harry W. Jenkin at NBC. He also adapted this story, and the cast included Lyle Sidrow, Raina Rayburn, and James Monks. Again, this adaptation varies significantly from the original story that Bradbury had published in Weird Tales. Is that the emphasis is more on the couple rather than on John Colt. Those of you who have read the story, John Colt is the protagonist in here, and he's subject to the wind. I find this was a fascinating story, and I think again Suspense could have done a little bit better job in adapting it, emphasizing more of Colt's story. His name is actually changed to Alan Henderson for whatever reason. Then we come to The Mysterious Traveler, The Haunted Trailer. Written by Robert Arthur, Weird Tales, January 42, and they changed the title. He changed the title from Death Thumbs a Ride. And this was on The Mysterious Traveler, June 3rd, 1952. The Mysterious Traveler was originally directed by Jack McGregor, with Arthur and David Cogan writing the stories. After a couple of years, McGregor bowed out, and it became basically Arthur and Cogan, and the series ran for about 9 years on Mutual. David Cogan happened to be the producer-director of this episode, and the cast included Maurice Tarplin as the Mysterious Traveler, Larry Haynes as the ghost, James Stevens as the person who has the trailer who gets haunted, Blue Secret as another ghost, and Shirley Blank as the girlfriend. There is audio available of this on many websites. Now, from the anthology, as I'm going to go to the dramatic readings, there were many one-person storytellers on radio, and one of the best was Nelson Olmsted. Now, you probably have seen him. He was one of the great television and film character actors from the 1950s all the way up through into the 90s. He passed away in the early 1990s. But starting in the late 1930s and going through actually into the 1950s, he had several different versions of basically a one-man storyteller series, from the world's greatest stories to story dramas, Story for Tonight, Nelson Olmsted Playhouse, Nelson Olmsted and Company, when he was in Chicago and actually did a half-hour adaptation with a full cast. And then Sleep No More, which was on radio in the 1950s, and also many of you are probably familiar with the series that was put out on LPs. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of stories that Olmsted did on the radio. The series could be once a week all the way up to 5 times a week, and this went on for years and years and years. And I've come up with a few of these. It was thought that the Lovecraft episode of The Dunwich Horror on Suspense was actually the first adaptation or reading of Lovecraft on radio, but it turns out now that it wasn't. It was the music of Eric Zahn, and I've kind of stretched things a little bit here, is that story was originally published in the National Amateur in March of 22, but it was later reprinted in Weird Tales in twice, May 1925 and November of 34. And Olmsted aired it on his program. He read it on this program May 29th, 1943. And these readings were basically, I followed the readings along with the pulp stories, and they're actually pretty good. He follows the story right along. It does inflections of different people, and they sometimes add organ and a few sound effects, but it's pretty good. Olmsted was also a fan of Mindret Lord. He did First Night. That was Weird Tales from July 41. He actually did that at least twice, aired in 1943 and also 1947. And he also did Lil, and he aired that on November 26, 1946. Paul Ernst, who we know from Dr. Satan in Weird Tales. Olmsted read his story Escape, which was published in Weird Tales in 1938, and he aired that on at least 2 occasions. One of his short story dramas in 1944, and also on The Sleep No More in 1957. Then down at the bottom, and I apologize if you can't read that as it's down in the orange, it's another Ray Bradbury story, The Night, that Olmsted read. This was originally in Weird Tales in July 46, and it aired August 27th of 1947. And the last slide here, I'm going to talk about The Man with Book and Pipe. And this was just one of many, many local basically horror stories, series that were on local stations. This one happened to be on WPAN in Philadelphia. It aired during the summer of 1945 on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule. It was for 15 minutes. Henry Kuttner, whose picture is there on the right, his story was selected by Francis Falanda, who's the host, The Man with Book and Pipe. The Graveyard Rats was published in Weird Tales in March of 36. And this one included a little organ that was by Joseph Ranzoso, who was the music director of WPEN. And I've got the audio link down there for this. It's on the archive.org site. And that's a pretty good reading, too. They run about 14 minutes. And I thought that was a very interesting reading of Kuttner's story. There's probably many, many others out there. Maybe some of you know some of those. I may have missed a few. But again, that's a general survey, and this is just the first time I've really looked into Weird Tales, other than Stay Tuned for Terror, to see what actually has been out there. And there's a lot more out there, and I've learned a lot, and would enjoy any questions. Thank you.
When Olmsted did his readings, was he literally reading the story as written, or was it an adaptation or condensed?
It seems to me he was. Well, they had. The question is, Olmsted, he basically, they would write a script so that everything was timed, for radio. But it followed the story, and he tried to do, his best dramatic interpretation as a one-man show. Yeah. Have you ever heard any of his, there's some online, OTRR.org, oldtimeradioresearch.org has several of these. Olmsted readings. Next question.
That the Boogeyman story, was that made into an episode of Dark Room in 1981?
Dark Room.
There was an anthology TV show called Dark Room.
Yeah. Dark Room.
And it took place in 1981. But I think that story where he says at the end, "I'm a werewolf," was made. I don't know if it was called the same thing, but it was almost word to word. At the end, he says, "You can see me in the mirror just because I eat at restaurants." No, I'm not a vampire. And then he turns into a werewolf. She says, "Stay away," and that's the end of it. She screams at him, "Stay away from me!" And yeah, I'm almost sure.
I'll have to. Thank you for bringing that up. I'll have to check on that.
Well, wasn't Stephen King the host on that one?
No, there was some
James
older guy,
Goldberg?
next to Dark
James
Room. It
Goldberg.
was someone else.
That's right, because they wanted Stephen King, and he said he wasn't.
Who was it?
They wanted Stephen King originally, but they got James Coburn.
James Colbert. I think that only lasted like an episode, or
No, it lasted about a half a season.
Good lady in the back.
I mean, yeah, that's only one season or half a season. Yeah.
Go ahead.
We get a lot from the audio medium, radio. I love it. I love getting the records and hearing your representation and sharing it with us. I so appreciate it. And how can we take the existing pulps and still continue that? What are your thoughts on, like, it was done once, how does it happen again?
Oh, well, there are many groups that are recreating radio programs. They're all over the country. I'm involved with the Metro Washington Old Time Radio Club in D.C. We do recreations. There are other groups in Atlanta, in Texas, all over that do recreations. And I think the only thing we have to do would be to suggest that, hey, why don't you try to do some weird tale stories? And I'm sure if there's an interest, I'm sure that would, they would take that into consideration. Gentlemen.
On the heels of that, would you be able to find, you're outlining all these fantastic programs to listen to, is there an accessibility to the original radio scripts that you as a group or an organization could take and run with?
Yeah, for some programs there are original scripts. The Mole Mystery, all the scripts exist. The suspense scripts. I'm still trying to locate a lot of the Nelson Olmsted scripts and the scripts for this series as well. So some of them have been copyrighted. I'm doing a lot of work at the Copyright Drama Deposit Collection Library of Congress. Many archives all over the country have scripts that nobody has really delved into. Radio is it's the stepchild of media studies. You have television, films, theater, and literature and music and radio. There's so much to do in radio, lifetimes of work to try to track down all this information and material. But thanks for asking.
I once heard a radio adaptation of The Outsider by Lovecraft that I really enjoyed, but I never figured out what year it was or where it figures in what program it was on. Do you know about that?
I think that it was later. I covered it, and I should have mentioned at the beginning. I was only covering basically radio's golden age, 1930 to 1955 or into the early 1960s and not until later. But I've come across The Outsider. I think it was in the 80s or maybe even later than that.
A bit newer.
Yeah.
Just a quick comment, the Graveyard Rats still has legs. It was just adapted last year as part of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosity series on Netflix.
Right, okay. I don't see a whole lot of TV, so I appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you. Yeah, you're great. Yeah, that's a great story about Kuttner, yeah. Anybody else?
I'm just curious, are you familiar with the more modern sort of pseudo-radio plays of the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society? They have done audio plays of just about everything in the Lovecraft canon.
I've come across it. I haven't had the opportunity to delve into that in real detail, but I'm aware that they're doing that. So
it's actually great stuff.
Yeah, it is great stuff.
And sort of related to that, Cadabra Records is issuing Lovecraft readings, and it's Andrew Lehman from the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society who does the narration. In most cases, they're reading the full text of Lovecraft stories and putting them on vinyl record, and it's really good.
One thing I didn't mention, in one of Steve Joshi's books on Lovecraft, he mentioned in a brief note that Lovecraft had been approached while he was still alive to do either a radio adaptation or a radio series, and he declined. And I haven't been able to follow up that. I mean, that would have been great to have been a Lovecraft in the 1930s. I mean, that would have been fantastic, but yeah. Great, we're done. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to a Pulp Event podcast, brought to you by the Pulp Net, your link to the online world of the pulp magazines for over 25 years. Learn more about the pulp magazines through articles, blogs, bibliographies, links, over 100 episodes of this podcast, and much more at thepulp.net. Also, look for the Pulp Net on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you for listening, and keep reading the pulps. This Pulp Event podcast is copyright 2023 by William P. Lampkin. All rights reserved.